Marissa, hi, it is lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
So, you are the founder and creative director of boutique marketing agency, The Connectory. You're a brand storyteller and strategist, and you are also the founder and director of Fern, which is the Female Entrepreneurs Resource Network. And
Correct.
remembered it. And I think that's actually where we met, I think, at one of your events a few years ago here in Spain.
I
And when
believe
I was
so.
looking at your background, it seems, from my background anyway, it seems quite creative. It's media, marketing, and events, and really international as well. You've worked in a lot of different countries.
I think you presented that very well. Couldn't do a better
Good.
job myself.
Well, welcome to 5 curly career questions. Are you ready for your first question?
I am, and thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. Okay, so the first question. Can you tell me about a time when you experienced a career transition or a time you felt stuck?
I can definitely think of a couple. I would say the biggest one was in 2015. And that was right after I moved to Sitges, where we both live.
Yeah.
And I had left a contract job after about a year that really wasn't a good fit for me.
Mm.
I had two little babies at home. I had a partner who was traveling constantly. We had just bought a house. I knew no one. And it wasn't, or Sitges isn't, or it wasn't at the time, a place where there was a lot of industry or work opportunity other than going into the city. And so I would say I felt stuck because I just didn't know where to go from there.
Yeah.
And I went through a pretty big transition at that time. And I actually took myself from being an employee to being an entrepreneur. I took myself from the travel and tourism industry into startup communications. And I took myself from working with a team in an office to working remotely alone from home. So it's a big shift.
That's a really big shift. Yeah. Thank you for that.
I think it's a big reason why I do what I do and help
Yeah.
so many people who are in transition and going through reinvention, because I realized how important it is to look back and reframe that story
Yeah.
In order to be able to step forward and into the right opportunities and
Totally.
in alignment with who we are.
Yeah, totally. Look back and remember, yeah, how far we've come. So, the second question. We have certain priorities in our 20s and our 30s, and, our priorities change as we shift through our careers and our lives. So, what one way would you say have your priorities changed?
I think also as a parent, one of the biggest priority changes for me was needing flexibility. And so less travel and being able to be home more and being able to create my own schedule. And I think one of the ways I did that was by going online and being able to work with clients around the world, not necessarily relying on the local market or having to travel into work every day. So I think
Yeah,
that was a big priority shift for me.
yeah,
Sort of location independence, let's say,
yeah,
and
yeah. It's a big
flexibility.
one. Yeah, for sure. Okay, thank you. So, when you look back over your career to date, I guess, what are a couple of key resources or maybe pieces of advice that you've had along the way that sort of stick with you?
I'm going to say the first resource was having a supportive partner.
Yeah.
It's a good one. I mean, when I went through that transition, there were several months where I wasn't bringing in income and I needed to really go deep and figure out what my next steps were. And he was incredibly supportive, patient, and understanding as I went through that process. So
Mm.
I feel like having some kind of support is a big resource. And I also got a really great piece of advice that I was reflecting on, which was actually earlier. It was in 2007. I was also wanting to make a change in my career. This was before having a family. And I spoke to my dad, and he had been in marketing for a long time. And he said, here's what you do. Write down 5 scenarios.
Okay.
5 scenarios, which are 5 different potential career paths you could take. But don't just write down the title, the company that you work for, the job or the salary. Think about the entire lifestyle that goes with it. So where are you working? Who are you working with? What does your work environment look and feel like? How do you feel about yourself? How many hours are you putting in? How much are you earning? How do you spend your money? How do you spend your free time? All of the things that that go into that big picture. And so I did that for 5 very, very, very different routes. And I found it extremely helpful because I was able to envision myself in the whole lifestyle, not just the career, because I think it is about that. And what ended up happening was I manifested an opportunity within a few short months that kind of pulled from 2 or 3 of those different scenarios. And it was so spot on. And it took almost the best parts. And it was just amazing, I think, to me, the power of visioning, of being able to see
Sure.
and feel where you're going, rather than just walking blind, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's a wonderful piece of advice, actually. Yeah, it really resonates with me, that whole big picture thinking and being able to sort of get it out of up here and put it down. And it's like, it's amazing how then, like you say, it can manifest itself in different ways. Cool. Love that. Thank you. So, question 4. You may not know this about me, but I hate, loathe, and detest coriander. And when I think about those feelings, I guess, of hate, loathe, and detest, how does that translate for you in a professional setting or a work context? What would your coriander equivalent be?
Okay, I love coriander.
So many people do.
But what I don't love, especially about running my own business, I would say this is true now, being a solopreneur, I don't love sales. I don't love accounting. I don't love the budgeting. I don't love the pricing. I don't love the proposal writing. I think this is a big piece that if I could just offload it or hand it over to a super savvy partner and not have anything to do with it anymore, so I could just do the fun, creative, and strategic work with my clients, I would be overjoyed. I try so hard to love it, but it just doesn't come naturally to me. It's not something that I.
Yeah. It's a toughie. That's your coriander. Yeah, I get it.
Either one.
Okay. So I lived for a long time in New Zealand, and in Maori culture, a koha is a gift. And using that concept loosely, what koha would you give to somebody going through a transition now, or stuck maybe at a career junction or a crossroads?
Okay. I can think of probably a couple. I talked about visioning and looking ahead and where you want to go. I also believe very much in looking back. So a lot of the work I do with my clients is looking back at our journey and pulling out some of the highlights or the turning points. What made you who you are today? What parts of your past work experiences did you love? Did you feel, most lit up by? How can you carry those forward if you're stuck and not sure what direction to take? In the same way that, what parts of your past experiences were coriander moments, right? That you don't want to carry forward, right? So even if you don't know what the job itself is or even the industry, I think you can get clear on the parts, the aspects, the elements that you want or don't want in a future career. So that's one. The other one I think is confidence. I think you really want to be able to feel confident stepping into the unknown. And what helps me and what helps, I think, a lot of my clients is to look at past endorsements. What have people said about you? What are some of the patterns that are showing up as a reminder of the unique value that you bring, right? Yeah. Because that's something that you're going to want to put out there, whether you're in a job interview, looking to be employed, or whether you're going to be creating a service, business and putting yourself out there that way. It's something to draw from and something that you can build your confidence, I think, from.
Yeah.
I would also mention, and I mentioned it earlier, I think support and community. So you talked about Fern. Fern was big for me. I think going through that big transition, having a community to feel like I wasn't alone, that I could bounce ideas off of, get some feedback from, in the same way that a coach like yourself or a mentor can provide support along the journey. So this is a tough place to be, feeling stuck, and I don't think people should do it alone. So my advice would be, take the support and join a community or start a community if you don't have one where you live. Don't navigate this journey for yourself.
Yeah, that's really, totally 100%. Thank you.
It's very hard to see or to get the perspective when you're inside your own head, right? So I just think having that outside perspective is huge.
Yeah.
And a lot of why I do what I do today is because of Fern. Yeah. So I think even though I went into that community not knowing what I wanted to do next, I came out of it knowing what I loved about those events, and it was very much about people's stories. So
cool. Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of the 5 curly questions, but there is an extra one. which is a mystery question I borrowed the idea from Stephen Bartlett in his hugely successful podcast.
Yes.
So this question was left by a previous guest, and their question is, before you made a change, what was holding you back?
If we're talking about that big change in 2015, I think I had a limiting belief around motherhood, new motherhood, and what that meant for my professional career. And so I was really scared that I was no longer going to be able to be in the market, at least not for a while. I didn't know if I could show up in the same way because of maybe what happened in that last job and just not feeling like I could be in both places at once. A strong parent and a strong employee. And that's not true for everybody, obviously, but it was for me. So I think I really struggled to find my confidence. Again, I would say confidence was a big one, and belief that I could come up with a totally new way of working, even if I had to build it myself, rather than fitting myself into a system that maybe didn't work for me at the time.
Yeah. Really? Thank you. Yeah, that's a really lovely answer. Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you. Short and sharp and sweet, hopefully. Thank you, Marisa. It's been my pleasure to have you on here.
A pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.